peopled with ugly old shadows piously dozing, spitting and begging, was to plunge into a fiery river and swim for life to the nearest strip of shade. So with people lounging and lying wherever shade was, with but little hum of tongues or barking of dogs, with occasional jangling of discordant church bells and rattling of vicious drums, Marseille, a fact to be strongly smelt and tasted, lay broiling in the sun one day. In Marseille that day there was a villainous prison. In one of its chambers, so repulsive a place that even the obtrusive stare blinked at it and left it to such refuse of reflected light as it could find for itself, were two men. Besides the two men, a notched and disfigured bench immovable from the wall, with a draught-board rudely hacked upon it with a knife, a set of draughts made of old buttons and soup bones, a set of dominoes, two mats, and 2 or 3 wine-bottles. That was all the chamber held, exclusive of rats and other unseen vermin, in addition to the seen vermin, the two men. It received such light as it got through a grating of iron bars, fashioned like a pretty large window, by means of which it could be always inspected from the gloomy staircase on which the grating gave. There was a broad, strong ledge of stone to this grating, where the bottom of it was let into the masonry, 3 or 4 feet above the ground. Upon it, one of the two men lolled, half sitting and half lying, with his knees drawn up and his feet and shoulders planted against the opposite sides of the aperture. The bars were wide enough apart to admit of his thrusting his arm through to the elbow, and so he held on, negligently, for his greater ease. A prison taint was on everything there. The imprisoned air, the imprisoned light, the imprisoned damps, the imprisoned men were all deteriorated by confinement. As the captive men were faded and haggard, so the iron was rusty, the stone was slimy, the wood was rotten, the air was faint, the light was dim. Like a well, like a vault, like a tomb, the prison had no knowledge of the brightness outside, and would have kept its polluted atmosphere intact in one of the spice islands of the Indian Ocean. The man who lay on the ledge of the grating was even chilled. He jerked his great cloak more heavily upon him by an impatient movement of one shoulder, and growled, "To the devil with this brigand of a sun that never shines in here." He was waiting to be fed, looking sideways through the bars that he might see the further down the stairs, with much of the expression of a wild beast in similar expectation. But his eyes, too close together, were not so nobly set in his head as those of the king of beasts are in his, and they were sharp rather than bright, pointed weapons with little surface to betray them. They had no depth or change. They glittered, and they opened and shut. So far, and waiving their use to himself, a clockmaker could have made a better pair. He had a hook nose, handsome after its kind, but too high between the eyes by probably just as much as his eyes were too near to one another. For the rest, he was large and tall in frame, had thin lips where his thick moustache showed them at all, and a quantity of dry hair of no definable colour, in its shaggy state, but shot with red. The hand with which he held the grating, seamed all over the back with ugly scratches newly healed, was unusually small and plump, would have been unusually white but for the prison grime. The other man was lying on the stone floor, covered with a coarse brown coat. "Get up, pig," growled the first. "Don't sleep when I am hungry." "It's all one, master," said the pig, in a submissive manner, and not without cheerfulness. "I can wake when I will, I can sleep when I will, it's all the same." As he said it, he rose, shook himself, scratched himself, tied his brown coat loosely round his neck by the sleeves — he had previously used it as a coverlet — and sat down upon the pavement, yawning, with his back against the wall opposite to the grating. "Say what the hour is," grumbled the first man. "The midday bells will ring in 40 minutes. When he made the little pause, he had looked round.